Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. This is a multimedia platform to bring hazmat response information and training tips from hazmat members around the globe. I'm Phil Ambrose, and I'll be acting as host for the show tonight. I am joined by, Bob Cosch, Mike Monaco, and Bobby Salveson. Bobby, let's introduce yourself.
I'm Bobby Salveson. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Hazmat Guys podcast, along with Mike over wherever he is on your screen. And we're here to go over what were we going over? Gasoline and diesel tonight, right?
Yep.
Very exciting. Love it.
And Mike, since he mentioned you, how about an intro?
I am another one of the Hazmat Guys. I work in the New York City Fire Department and here to give whatever little crappy bits of information that I can.
Well done.
Excellent job.
And I assume you have pants on. How about the Cosch there in the tank top?
Yeah, maybe. Bob Cosch again, Hazmat Lieutenant, Orlando Fire Department. Also training with HazSim. And we're going to talk about diesel and gasoline and some emergencies and some other good stuff.
Excellent.
Awesome. We'll get into it, but I told these guys I was going to do some plugs. And I noticed the Hazmat Guys got their shirts out, which I plan on getting one. So if you haven't ordered one, get one.
All the cool kids are getting them.
Yeah, all the cool. So get your shirt. I'm going to mention it now in case we forget at the end of the show. We're all going to be at FDIC, and we're also planning a live show. The logistics are still happening, but it's looking like it's going to be at a venue on Wednesday night, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
we're all going to be there.
I think Jason Rogers was working out the logistics.
Yeah, and I think Jason's on there. Maybe we'll hear from him later. I got the shirts, the live show. Don't forget that Baltimore, because it's going to come up faster than we can imagine. And I know both the two gentlemen here, Bobby and Mike, are teaching classes. I don't think in the same room, but nearby. And you're going to catch them there. And let's see, Bob Cosch just got back from a whirlwind trip around from Arizona, where he got to hang out with the infamous Jeff Zintek and Wisdom.
Very cool guy.
Yeah,
so getting right into it.
Over the world.
And I'm just Phil Ambrose from Hazmat Nation, and I thank Jason Rogers, who now also edits for Hazmat Nation and HazSim. So we picked the topic of gas and diesel response, and it's one of those very much fire science 101. Firefighters should be aware of this, and as the redheaded stepchildren, as Hazmat Guys, it's something we deal with, and we deal with even in a bigger capacity. And I thought I'd open it up. I know everybody here had something to say about gas and diesel response.
Yeah. I'll start off. I think that gas and diesel response is one of those things where it is so commonplace that people take it completely for granted. We see these things on YouTube where, the girls, they say on every sign, do not leave your car running by order of the fire commissioner, a penalty of death or something like that. And the girl is on the phone smoking a cigarette, and then she rubs her cardigan against the car, and the whole car bursts into flames. And that's not it doesn't happen often, but we overlook all these basic things. And gasoline is a very flammable liquid, and because we use it all the time, complacency is through the roof. Oh, delivery!
Holy crap!
That's awesome.
Damn it!
She just walked in, and I turned around behind me to see. That was weird. I don't know why I just did that.
It was like The Grudge, like somebody was on TV.
Yeah, I thought someone was going to kill me.
That's
That's
awesome. Good
That's
job.
the good, gluten-free vodka in California. Means no headache. Man, is that good. Where were we? Hopefully the audience is drinking, because it makes this show a lot better.
Yeah.
Okay. The basics. It's an everyday thing that we get. I remember the scene out of Zoolander. Anybody recall that? That gasoline fight at the gas station?
Where they're all dousing themselves. Yeah.
Everybody gets very complacent, but I know I looked up on Hazmat Nation just for what we had posted on gasoline incidents. Seems like the tankers, we've had several in Southern California, the tanker explosions. I know there was one last year on the Jersey Turnpike. And that's really a fire response until, I don't know, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the runoff, potential application of foam But now we're talking gasoline response before it turns into that fire, right? The stinger operation, the pump off operation. How often are you guys going on calls like that as compared to when it bursts into flames?
Fairly, I don't want to say fairly frequently. So we consider the gasoline and the diesel kind of our bread and butter. However, the big tanker truck, rollover, they maybe happen once in a blue moon, right? Once every couple of years.
Yeah.
But we seem to be offloading fuel from something almost every other day. Whether we're offloading it from a leaking gas tank and we're puncturing and drilling, or if we're taking diesel out of the saddle tank of some big rig, that generally is where we find it. And when we do have issues with tanker trucks, it's generally a slow little leak that we're able to control. But the big disastrous tanker flipovers, they're pretty few and far between.
It's funny. I was telling Phil earlier that I read an article that 288 and Hazmat 1 went to in FDNY. I think it was 94, maybe earlier than that, where I guess it was right around the corner from the firehouse, and it ripped the side of the tank, got into the drainage system. There was fire, explosion, mayhem, and the whole 9 yards right down the road from where you guys are housed at. Do you guys? I think it was before you guys probably came on, but I'm sure you guys probably heard about it.
It's probably happened before, but it definitely happened on one of my watches, or I was coming in to work, and we had to from coming into work had to respond to the scene to assist. But yeah, that's exactly what happened. We had a tanker truck flip over, it ripped apart, burst into flames. Fuel ended up getting into the sewer system and kind of traveled down. And at some point in the operation, actually after the initial fire was put out, and it lit up again, and then put out, and then lit up again. It did flash, through the sewer system. That wasn't too long ago, maybe 2005.
Yeah, I think I was on that. I was still in the squad at that point.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
You know what I love? Good.
No, I was going to tell an interesting little story of how the fire department really needs to be listened to and be running the scene totally. In that tanker truck incident, so it happened just under a bridge. So there's a turn, a bridge, the tanker truck flipped over, ripped open, and spilled all its fuel. Everything ignited. It was absolutely a fantastic sight. And the bridge was under construction, and they ended up warping the beams over the bridge. So we put the fire out. The fire department puts the fire out for the first time. There's blankets of foam everywhere. Everything seems relatively calm. And the iron workers, they want to start cutting the bridge. So they turn around and say, we need to start cutting these beams. These beams are all warped. We need to start cutting them. We're about, 9 hours into the operation already. So the fire department says, that's not a good idea. We shouldn't do that. The iron workers are like, yeah, we're pretty much doing it anyway. So the chief said, all right, well, at least have one of our guys with you with a meter so we can monitor the atmosphere where everything is being cut. All right, no problem. So the guy goes up into a cherry picker. One of our guys with a meter goes into a cherry picker. He's over this huge puddle of gasoline. They open up the torch and they start cutting. And there was no flammable atmosphere up there, but when they hit the torch to the steel, a little tiny ember floated down all the way. And the whole scene, watch this ember float down, hit the gasoline, and whoosh, the whole thing ignited. And the two iron workers jump off of the cherry picker and run down this warped beam, and there's our guy in full PPE and bunker. You're like a marshmallow roasting over the flame. It was hindsight funny.
You know what I love about these scenes, and I'm going to guarantee it happens in your areas, that we go to these scenes, the gas tank is leaking. We put the speedy dry down to kind of catch it a wee bit, and then we put the catch basin, and then we take all the liquid out of the catch basin and we put it in a drum, and job's over. And I'm like, the gasoline that's in the speedy dry, it didn't just magically disappear. There wasn't Pixie that just took this up. It's still right there. So if somebody's smoking a cigarette and throws it into the speed dry, it will still go on fire. But everyone's like, what are you gonna?
That'll never happen.
That'll never happen.
But
you know, that's when we're talking about gas. Was that a gasoline, Mike?
Yeah, that was gasoline.
That was gas.
What are the things that we have between the gasoline and diesel? Obviously there's different properties and whatnot, but one of the things that we have to make sure we're very cognizant of, especially here in Florida, when we have that July, it's 95 degrees outside, 85% humidity, feels like it's, 110 degrees. I've been asked, what's more dangerous, gasoline on a roadway or diesel on a roadway? And a lot of people, believe it or not, still don't know the difference between the two. Gasoline's going to vaporize pretty quickly versus that diesel. So which let's open that up for a little bit. Which one do you guys think is more dangerous in your type of environments?
I would venture to say gasoline.
Well, I'm going to go with the diesel.
You're going to go with the diesel. Sweet.
And I think as Bob posed the question, and having been in Florida on that nice hot day, a lot of open spaces and great water with a bunch of gators in it, I could see how gasoline might not be as tricky as the diesel.
Yeah, gasoline actually, well, in this area, actually gasoline is vaporizing so fast by the time we get there, unless it's just a pool of whatever going on, it's pretty much done with. For us, diesel is a little bit more of a worry than the gasoline.
Right.
That's I think, and that's a great point to say regionally, because based on standard temperature and STPs, and it's like how we were talking about fumigation, the differences between Florida, California, and New York. I know that for us, I think we've had a few in the last year, not necessarily right in our district, but we've got some pretty major freeways going through, and when it's on fire, it's spectacular, but it's also less of a runoff hazard. I know that we're not supposed to say "let it burn" in air quotes. The AQMD would be all over that, but it makes me more comfortable as first in, second in, third in. It's more exciting, and it makes me more comfortable when it's just burning.
Right. Well, what is that? What is that formula? It's double the air temperature is the temperature of the concrete. It's something like that. Double the air temperature minus 20 degrees or something. It's something around there, right?
Something around that, yeah.
I can't remember what it is. But
I mean, a good hot day on asphalt, you can pour gasoline and it'll volatilize almost instantly. I mean, I had it up here. Everybody should know it, right? Fire Science 101, flash point at negative 45 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Oh,
where
Jason Carr just said that's LP. I must have had the wrong numbers. If anybody remembers it, just throw it up on the side. I'll mention it. But I know Jason, there's a way.
Yeah.
I love the farewell videos, by the way, Jason.
Yeah. A little shout out to Jason Kerr. We're just retiring from Jacksonville Fire Department Hazmat after a great career.
Try to start a barbecue in Afghanistan with JP8.
See you soon, bro.
JP8 is diesel.
I kind of agree. Yeah, it's kind of a kerosene diesel properties. I'm gonna have to. I'm
helicopter
still gonna go
fuel.
I'm gonna still kind of go with my gasoline, because diesel is still. I mean, you got, at least up here, you got to have a really hot day to have a problem with diesel.
Yeah, well, I mean, the flash point's what, like 140 or something like that Fahrenheit?
Yeah. It's close to that. So 120,
right?
140, something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, it's got to be hot.
It's got to be hot.
So your typical hazmat. Let's stick with the exciting stuff, the big fireballs or the major, the 8,700 gallons. You're on a busy street in Manhattan that's got all those little basements and the trash in the street and all that. You're getting called, so it's not just a leaking saddle tank. It's not on fire. What are you guys thinking about?
Mike?
Say it again. If it's not a leaking saddle tank,
accident, no fire. It's
okay.
It's bigger than a leaking saddle tank. It's a 406 and it's breached and they're diking and damming, but it's gasoline and it's leaking through the streets. What are you thinking?
Well, we're going to try to suppress the vapors that are leaked. We're going to try to slow down the leak itself. And worst case scenario, if it's going that bad, we're going to try to prevent more fluid from getting all over the place. That's really going to be our biggest operations, is suppressing the vapors.
Yeah, and even putting some plastic topping across the sewers. We have tons and tons of sewers. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of cracks at least in the transitions between curb and street, Although New York City's actually pretty good with that. They actually put like a metal lip on their curbs. It keeps people from cracking into them when they hit something, like when they hit into it with the bus and stuff like that, and they crack the curb. So I would say just basically, you're doing the whole damming, diking, absorption, and hopefully you can hold it back with something so that you can start pumping it out with your pumping capabilities, whatever that might be.
What's your expectations before you showed up? And Bob, same for you. Before you showed up, what's your expectation of the operational folks? I mean, gasoline, it's fire science 101. It's something we should be comfortable with. What's your expectation by the time you guys get there? What are you doing versus what has already been done?
I'm hoping that by the time we get there, the hazmat unit gets there, that they've got, like Bobby was saying, they've got an area, and Mike was saying, they got an area diked off. They've already told us about how much product they have on the ground, which goes back to that educational thing of, pouring 5 gallons or, getting a bucket of water, pouring it out and educating people what 5 gallons versus 50 gallons really looks like. We talked about that in some episodes back ago. Because we've been called to scenes where, oh my God, it's 50 gallons and it's like maybe 0.5 gallons on the ground. So hopefully getting a good size up from the first new officer, telling me exactly what they've got on the ground. Is it going into any storm drains? Do they have a protection line pulled? Every engine we have has 30-gallon foam tank, and they also have 2 5-gallon buckets of foam, which we just switched over to a different type of foam, and we can talk about that later if we want. So the biggest problem that we have is trying to hold some people back because they want to throw foam on it right away. And we know that when we're throwing foam, we're also throwing water, which we're making our spill bigger, which may be a bad thing. Every engine company also carries a bucket of absorbent, and there's different types out there. So if they can at least maybe get something thrown down or diked off, that's just basic defensive operations is all I'm looking for right off the bat. And an intel as to size of the leak. Is it dripping? Is it flowing? Is it, things like that. So I know whether or not to call for, the foam truck, dump truck with sand, all these other things that I might need to incorporate, on top of which, for us in Florida, calling state warning point, letting them know we have, X amount of product on the ground, a major roadway shutdown, it's going into a waterway, these types of things. So basic defensive operations, I would say, for the first new company.
What about properties? What are you thinking?
As far as what, like real estate properties or chemical physical properties?
I think they're going up. I think it's constantly going up. They're doing all sorts of building in the area.
Back to chemical properties. You mentioned it with the time of day, based on it's New York City in December versus it's Florida in December, really.
Yeah,
I think still 95 degrees.
I think that gets back to it vaporizing almost immediately in Florida, and us arriving in New York, and you've got a pool no matter what time of year.
Tell me about the last home heating oil call you went on, Bob. Cosch.
Me? Oh, Cosch.
I'm sorry. What is that?
Exactly. It's fascinating regionally the difference, because all I read about is the home heating oil trucks that turn over. Never seen one in my life, at least not out this way. Switching to diesel. What we get diesel, and we can get it in. Obviously, going over the road, we get it in saddle tanks. And then you guys get it, I think, say more frequently in residential areas, because usually our diesel tankers are near the refineries or on the interstate. Is that just a pump off operation? What do you do with those?
If we're talking about diesel in a saddle tank, then we're pretty much pumping it off into a drum, and the truck driver's taking it away with them when they tow the vehicle. And if we're looking at a diesel spill in a house, I mean, we've been in there in SCBA and some Tyvek just to keep ourselves from getting dirty, and we just pump it out.
And remember, if but a lot of times, like, with these diesel ones, especially if it's diesel, like home heating oil, where you got like that 275 tank, that's either in the basement or on the side of the house. On the bottom of it, you'll see, depending on the age, a lot of the ones that we see are ancient. I'm talking like 70, 80, 90 years old, and they have these like little stalactites that are hanging down the belly of the thing. If you ever see that, don't touch them. That is like the bubble gum that's holding back the dam of oil. So but if you are catching what you have, and we do not have the ability to pump, well, there's no reason why I can't take that basin, pull it out, put a fresh one in, and re-pour it into the top and recirculate this stuff. You can get creative with this thing. You're not making it worse. You're going to keep it in check. It's kind of what we want to do. Even I was on one heating oil one where we pulled a vacuum. So what we did is we capped the fill line. We we popped off the whistler. And we stuffed it with a rag, and then we actually pulled out the 2-inch bung on the top and put a shop vac, literally a DeWalt, not DeWalt, it was like a Husky or whatever, shop vac on the top, just to pull like a pound or two, and that actually pulled air through the leak instead of letting the fluid come out of the leak. And the only reason why we were able to do this is because it's diesel, and we knew that the fumes going through this Home Depot, thing wasn't going to ignite anything. So Husky. But you got to think outside the box with these things. And I hate to use that term, but utilizing what you have and not being like, oh my God, I got to take 275 gallons and put it somewhere. Maybe you just keep it going around until you have that ability to come in, or maybe maybe fill up the neighbor. We do that a lot of time on the street where we'll have like, a saddle tank or even like a full 406 where we're going to have to offload a single compartment of 1,000 gallons. Well, we don't have that many drums. So we'll just pull other tractor trailers up next to them, and it's a free gas station. We just pump right into their gas tanks, and we mitigate our problem by filling up theirs. His oversight is your emergency kind of thing,
Right.
And then depending on where the location of the leak is, you always have the option of adding water to the container. If it's
that's another one.
Low, who cares if you're dripping, 100 gallons of water per minute? Dump it in and see what you got.
Right. Yeah, most of the spills that we've had a few of the 306s and stuff like that, but stuff that we end up dealing with, especially the interstates and roadways here, are saddle tank ruptures from a jackknife semi through our great, interstate highway that's always under construction. And, the guys try to do what they can to catch it. And I tell you what, and not that this is something you should do, don't advocate it, but it's up to your officer. Hey, you know what? Sometimes you got to drill the tank because you get practice drilling. Turn it into a training opportunity, because we got to pump off the saddle tank anyway, and if the situation provides and it's not, holding up other things, I would let the guys just tap the tank real quick and then pump it off so that if we did have that 306 in the middle of the night, they're already kind of familiar with, the pieces parts, so to speak. So just something else you could do is turn it into a training evolution.
I always like to drill. I feel like the hole that we can put in a saddle tank is better than the fill line, even if it's clear and unobstructed.
Right.
That's a good point, Mike. And go over that. I'm learning a bunch of new terms. I heard Bobby say a 275, which I kind of deduced that's 275 gallons in your typical home heating.
It's the typical barrel.
I'm hoping there's somebody else here. I think Ryan Henry, he's from the South, so I doubt they have something like that. I think their houses are on stilts or something. I've been down that way. And then you said a whistler.
Yeah, the whistler
is actually you ski at in Canada, right?
No, when
you go over that.
Yeah, I'll explain that real quick because I guess not all the country has these things. But when you fill up a 275 tank, it's a closed system. So it's basically a tank, and the way that the vapor space escapes while the liquid's going in is out through a pipe. So what they do is they put a little cap on it that has a whistle in it. So when the guy is filling it up, if he doesn't hear a whistle, he knows there's an issue. It's leaking somewhere. For every gallon you put in, you should be getting a gallon of vapor out. So this thing should be whistling, and it whistles quite a bit when they're putting it in. So we've had many a time where the guy has gone up to a 6-story multiple dwelling. I'm talking like they're taking 10,000 gallons of product, and the guy just sticks his harness on there, puts his Walkman in, doesn't hear the whistle, and that pipe was disconnected 6 years ago, and the guy just put 10,000 gallons of diesel into the basement. We do that probably twice, 3 times a year, right?
A lot.
So these whistlers are incredibly important, but people don't want to hear them. So the residents don't want to hear the thing whistling at 3 a.m. when the guy's delivering it. So they go out there and they bash it with a hammer, and they defeat the whistler. So it still operates, but it doesn't whistle. Funny
Awesome.
stuff.
Interesting. Be careful on transfer to other trucks. Be prepared to batch of fuel. Oh, interesting. Yeah, bad fuel. If it's free, you got to be careful.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Well,
listen, I can give it away.
operation.
If you take it, it's your responsibility.
Yeah,
You know?
it's on you, dude.
Yeah, it's on you.
Well,
I'm
why
not
don't you
telling
read
you
it
to
because
take it.
nobody's gonna be able to see it after the show posts.
Okay, so it's be careful on transfer to other trucks. Used to be our practice. Did it once, and it was a bad batch of fuel. Ended up buying a new engine. So
That's from
It's Jason from
Jason
Jax,
Kerr, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Kerr from Jax.
and I would tell them, well, you took it. I didn't tell you to take
Yeah.
it.
Hey, you got to sign the form right here.
Right. Not
I
responsible
worked,
for loss or misdirected opinions.
It could be bad or it could be better than. I worked in biotech years ago, and we had punctilious ethanol as a byproduct. It was basically Everclear in its purest, most beautiful form, but it would go away in a truck that just got done pumping mercapto ethanol or something. So it would go away as a waste, but you could just add some juice to it and have a good drink. But that would have been a good one to recycle. Stinger operations. I listened to a great podcast on this whole thing not too long ago.
Who did you listen to?
Who was that?
The Hazmat Guys podcast. No, it's good stuff. And anybody that is catching it now that doesn't listen to this stuff, I'll plug it all day long because it's just a great way to learn. But you guys were going over the saddle tanks, which I think we've all done in some way, shape, or form. And I agree with Bob. Any opportunity you have to pull the tools out. And I think, like you said, Mike, it's easier when you make your own insertion point rather than relying on what they have. But it's been a while for my department on a Stinger operation. Anybody done one recently and can talk about it?
Pretty much every time we pump out fuel.
Yeah, I'm going to say, in a saddle tank, if you open up the cap and you have that screen in there, sometimes you can take like a brass
Brass
bar or
flathead
something and
driver.
blast it out. But a lot of times, you take your 3-inch hole saw and you put it on a pneumatic drill and you blast through it. A saddle tank is what, like an 1/8 of an inch, maybe 3/16 of an inch thick, if that. But we actually got some slugs a 1/4 inch, which is the spec plate for 406s. And let me tell you, there's a big difference in drilling out a 406 than a saddle tank. I mean, we have we just got a new bit that's we got from MSC. I could put it in the show notes, something like that. But it's like it's a carbide tipped 3-inch hole saw, and you can club a baby seal with this thing. It is
It's an animal.
stout as possible.
But
But
what are you doing next weekend?
Yeah, we'll take it out for a little test run. But the thing is stout, and when it cuts big swaths of aluminum coming out. So when we go up on a 406. A couple of the things we do is when they're throwing up a 406, let's going to say we're going to sting a 406. And for those of you that don't know what a stinging is we're basically going to use a long tube to get to the bottom. That's pretty much what we're saying.
Like a soda straw and a pina colada.
Yeah,
Like a straw.
like a straw. That's it. And what we'll do is we'll it's slippery with the foam up there on the top, and it's rounded. You got to be very, very careful. I've heard guys say that they're going to put the entry mat from a store, like those rubberized mats, and drape it on top so you have a little grip. But it is.
Yeah, throw some foam on that. It usually happens before we get there, and that thing's
that brings up a good point, because some people are using an actual foam nozzle while the guy is drilling, and then I've talked to other people where they've got a ladder up on the side of the tanker, and they're just using a bottle of soapy water for the hole so that it's not so slippery for the guys that are up there.
So back up,
that's just
you're first in company officer on Hazmat to do a stinger of a 406. We'll say it's full on the interstate, 80 degrees, wind out of the west. What are you thinking? What are you rolling through?
should be on B shift. No, actually, what I'm thinking about is, okay, what's shut down? And if it's I-4 or the 408, which is two major arteries through Orlando, I've got a big problem because now I'm going to be getting phone calls, everybody trying to get things open up, highway patrol, whatnot. But more importantly, if we're going to offload this, I got to get a hold of the company that caused the accident, spill, whatever in the first place, and I got to get them to make sure they bring the proper tanker to offload the product into and give them the opportunity, because technically some of these companies have their own spill response teams. They have their own contract, whatever. Unless it's an immediate emergency, we've got to give them a little bit of latitude. But if it's something we're going to do, I got to make sure all the pieces are in line first before we do anything. So the first thing we're going to be doing is, as we mentioned before, diking off foam, and then making our notifications to get the proper tractor, trailer, authorized, whatever the thing is from the company on site before we even do anything. There was actually one we had on I-4 about 3 or 4 months ago that came as a traffic accident. Guy riding at a grade, meaning he was a driver riding up as lieutenant, pulled up and he saw that it was a 306 laying on the side with no leak, believe it or not. And so he took right. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It was even better. So he took the opportunity to get the pieces of the puzzle in the right order. And then when the contract team showed up, they asked the firemen, hey, do you guys want to drill this thing? It was a very good coordinated effort for what they were trying to do. So basically, we got to make sure all the pieces of the puzzle are ready to go before we do anything.
Yeah.
Bobby, Mike, you guys drilling? You guys letting the boot drill? Who's on the saw?
You know what? It all depends on who's working. Quite a lot of times when we're doing saddle tanks, we'll look around and see, and we'll ask who's only drilled a couple tanks, who hasn't drilled anything, and then we hand it off to them. We do the same thing with gasoline tanks when we're doing cars, and but for the most part, if it's an actual overturned tractor trailer, it's going to be the entry team. And if it's something that's in a kind of a precarious situation, then without a doubt, it's going to be the more experienced crew.
And let me just mention one thing too that some teams or some people may not think about. When you're going to tap the saddle tank, don't forget to check for the crossover valve, because you're pumping 125 gallon. You could have 2 125-gallon tanks, one on either side, and you're pumping and pumping and pumping away. You're thinking, Jesus Christ, is this ever going to stop? And we haven't taken care of the crossover valve.
I have not seen a crossover valve on a tractor trailer, and I don't know how long. It is like they suddenly all vanished.
They're all here in Florida.
I don't know about you.
What do you say about Florida, guys? What's the saying?
Just cut it off just north of Tallahassee and let it. Never mind. I'll stop there.
No, you know what? We're talking. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It seems like everything nowadays goes through the engine. So the engine self balances the tanks. We don't see any. Bob, how often do we look? I mean, we look every time. And do you see many crossovers?
No, because usually one of the saddle tanks is affected and the other one's not. So once you start to offload, it would be silly not to check that crossover. We've seen them go across the top. But I honestly I agree with him. I haven't seen very many in the last couple of years to see him, but
you got to check.
That's funny because almost every single, I'd say the last 50 in the last few years, every one of them is that one.
See, even when it comes to trucks, Florida's the place where old things go to die.
Yes.
I thought you said cross dressers. I was like, crossover.
No, but this whole thing is what we're calling cold tapping, right? Drilling.
Yes.
Not to be confused with a term you might hear called hot tapping.
What is hot tapping?
All right. Hot tapping is when you take a bulkhead or a threaded appliance and you put it against the tank, and then you actually weld the appliance into space, right? So we haven't cut a hole in it yet. Then you thread in a pipe nipple, you put on a shutoff, and then you stick a long drill bit through there, and you drill the tank. And once you pierce it, pull it out, shut the valve, and now you can evacuate the tank securely. I've never seen. I've seen them on YouTube. I've never been on scene where I've seen one or know anybody that has done it. Maybe somebody in the group has.
If I walked up to the tanker with a welder in my hand, my officer would shit himself.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I got this.
There's no two ways about that.
No.
Yeah. Go ahead. You take care of this one, kid. It's all on you.
The other one I thought I'd bring up, because as the cost of fuel goes up, fuel kind of came down, is the siphon trucks. We got a bunch of those, from U-Hauls to vans to cars with an extra tank. And that was vehicle set up with an extra tank so they can go around stealing fuel from other vehicles.
With a plastic bladder inside the minivan.
So you had either a series of 55-gallon drums, like what we might get from the RV vehicle types. They're going out to ride their motorcycles and they decide, hey, I'm going to grab this 55-gallon drum and put it unsecure to the back of my pickup truck and go down the freeway 85 miles an hour. But this is the ones that they stop in the ride share lots, and they go and they tap into people's tanks. So they've got a very makeshift operation to have the fuel. And then usually we end up on them because something went wrong. You guys get anything like that in the Northeast?
We've had in Florida, we've had them where they pull over the top of where a 306 would deliver the product to a gas station. There's a trap door in the minivan, the U-Haul truck, whatever, and they siphon it from the tank at the gas station into a plastic bladder or drums inside their vehicle, and they're stealing it. Well, not basically, they are. They're stealing it from these gas stations and hauling butt to wherever, and then reselling it on a black market or whatever it is they're doing.
We have on our website. It's funny you said we have this on our website. If you go to the hazmatguys.com, and as soon as you get on there, there's pictures that scroll. If you click on the pictures, there's got to be like 6 or 7 of these things where they had a guy with a minivan that he actually built a tank for the entire minivan. And then there was another one where the guy filled up the entire bed of his pickup truck, and he had a cap over it. And you can see he had like a little mini 12-volt pump, and he filled up everybody in the neighborhood. Or he would go down to the docks, and he would fill up the boats because it was cheaper.
There was a couple when gas prices were really through the roof. We had one where two geniuses, they have the you can get them on pretty much anywhere. Granger, they have these pumps that slip into a drill. And you can, it's kind of a drill-powered pump. They'll go to the gas stations, pull off the covers, stick it in, and they would try to offset, siphon off the gas from the actual tank. And it was not intrinsically safe, and they ended up, lighting themselves up like Roman candles. So it was a self-correcting issue.
That's karma.
Yeah,
self-correcting.
Usually when the price of fuel goes up, we'll see it, and they're either on fire and fun engine response, or it comes in. The cops got them, and then there's a leak, and then you're looking at how to offload, and it's not your traditional, say, Stinger operation, because you got to figure out how they were doing it in the first place. Sometimes plastic bladders or whatever they could find, but it's fairly inventive. I like the trapdoor one. I've heard about that.
That's brilliant.
And let me just tell, if anybody's listening, there's a lot of classes. You guys probably have been to them as well. Out in Pueblo, Colorado, they do a lot of this offloading, and there's got so many classes out there. A good friend of mine, Glenn Rudner's one of the main guys out there. And if you ever get the chance, go out to Pueblo, take their over-the-road hauler class. They've got WMD classes, but it talks about a lot of these offloading of product, how to properly drill tanks, how to properly do grounding and bonding, which we haven't even touched on yet, and things that are going to make everybody's job a lot safer.
Yeah,
and it's free. It's government. It's free.
Yeah.
What else you guys got? This is one of those subjects that it needed to be covered. It's not incredibly exciting.
Yeah. It's not. You know why it's not exciting? Because it's not sexy because it's so commonplace.
Yeah,
We do it all the time.
I mean,
And you know what? But though people get complacent though because it is so much.
right. And
then,
just the difference between, okay, this is diesel for over the road and this is number 2 home heating oil. It's the same stuff with coloring, right? I mean,
right.
For all intents and purposes, it's the same stuff. So I know all hazmat is sexy. You're looking at it. What do you guys use as recovery containers?
Anything we can put it in.
Yeah, honestly, we in New York, at least in New York City, we have 16-gallon, 55, 85. We carry an assortment of those with us, and basically every hazmat engine has that. We also have the capabilities of having bladder bags. We have 500-gallon bladder bags, and every one of those engines carries at least one. We carry 2. One is actually made for corrosives, and one is made for petroleum products. I will be honest with you, though I would love to say they're pains in the asses to set up, when you do set them up, they are fantastically efficient.
Yeah.
Now, what do you call a bladder bag? Because what we have on our hazmat and then all the hazmat truck companies is 125-gallon. We call it a bladder bag, but it's really a catch basin. That if we pulled up on a 306, it's okay. So something totally different.
Yeah, this
Imagine, those things that old people used to put, they'd heat up and like put on their head, right? Like that. You know what I'm talking about? Like that, right? My
down here in
grandmother
Florida.
had one.
Yeah.
You got them all over the place. CVS probably carries them.
You see it, know it.
So imagine that, but it's like 15 feet by 15 feet with a hole at the top to vent. And and it is literally just a giant. Think of an airbag like you would for rescue class. Think of that 15 by 15 with a hole at the top to vent, and then a hole at one of the sides to put a hose line in, and we just pump it right in, and it holds stuff. It's fantastic. It really does a good job.
Gotcha. Yeah, what I'm talking about, they call it a bladder, but it's actually it's a catch basin that will hold. I think it's 125 or 225 gallons. I forget which. That if we pull up on the scene, like I said, the hazmat one has it, and all our hazmat truck companies have it, and it folds. It's only about this big. It fits great in a compartment. But then when you open it up, if you come up on a leak, you throw it right underneath there, and you got an automatic catch basin. And then if you want to, you can pump from that into the 55-gallon drums.
It's good. It's good.
Nice.
Have a plan.
Yeah.
JPMKE just did a sister joke. That's hysterical. He says, "Are we talking about a bladder bag or your sister?"
Terrible. Oh, great.
Well, it's kind of funny because you picked this subject, and then they had that video from Egypt of all the poor people trying to run and get free fuel that flashed on them. It seems like every time we pick a subject, that something happens. So
within a week after,
funner.
Let's do radiation next week.
What's that?
Mike Lazy, who is a guy that we kind of know. Mike Lazy, Mike, right?
Yeah, I know Mike Lazy. In fact, if I yell loud enough, Mike Lazy can hear me.
Oh, he says that we use the burns.
Lazy. He just corrected me.
Oh, my bad.
Lazy.
My bad.
I think it's
one of your guys on hazmat?
Yeah.
Lazy?
Laz. Okay, got it. We use the berms, so there's like a big berm, and I think it's rated for like 50% more than the bladder. I don't hold me to that number, but we can also, although it's not recommended, we've tried it out where you can put the bladder bag on like a tarp, and then you can use the berm and the bladder bag, but there's no safety there. If the bladder bag pops, you got 500 gallons of problem. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Quarter way down.
And, if you absolutely have to, I don't know how many people are going to have them, but we have got these huge pools for like foam operations, something along those lines. If you guys have giant pools in a pinch, you could use something like that and keep a foam blanket on it to keep vapor suppression down. So it's just, it's whatever you have in your toolbox, and also don't discount pumping it back into the rig.
Right.
Right. And let me just read real quick what my brother Jason Kerr just popped up there. It says, we cut the bottom of a 55-gallon poly drum quarter way down, pump with the cam locks for hard to reach areas, make the hole bigger, pump off from that. So we're going to try and get some pictures of that, and maybe we could post that on the Hazmat Guys Nation Facebook page or Hazmat Nation or any of the other things.
Let's share. That's the community.
So that's what it's all about, sharing it. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jay.
Great.
Should we give this a hook, Bobby?
Do it, my man.
Let me just throw one last thing in there if I can.
Yes, sir.
If you we talk about operational level stuff and tech stuff. One of the good things you can do, and I've looked at it, and especially this topic here, is Hazmat Response Field Operations Guide by Jeff Zintek. It's got a lot of good information on it, and just bringing another drink, bro. That's awesome.
I love it.
Sweet. But I was just going through it, and actually it talks about some of these offloading the products and stuff, and so that's a good thing to look at if you guys don't have that yet.
Yeah, speaking of plugs, I got a bunch of them here again. So I'm going to wrap it up because this was a good little conversation. I like the side chat. And this wraps up another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. Please be sure to follow us on all of our Facebook pages. We've got the Hazmat Nation. We've got the Hazmat Guys. We've got Facebook pages for all of those. Lots of different ways to get after us. And if, like Bobby mentioned, it's all about community and sharing. In fact, right now I see Jeff Z popping up on the side there. If you don't know Jeff Z, you should. And I'm going to plug his fog guide because I'm a big fan because it just has everything all in one place. I'm going to plug again for these guys because they won't do it as much as they should, which is the podcast, which you haven't been listening. Put in your earbuds and listen to it. I use it either to go to sleep. Just kidding. But it's great running on the treadmill, swimming in the pool. I'm Phil Ambrose from Hazmat Nation. If you ever have anything you want to put up on Hazmat Nation, got a new rig, got a story, send it. We'll share it with everybody. Everybody's got different news, but we're trying to put it all in one place, and it's searchable. And we've got some really good contributors, including Todd Burton and Jason Rogers. That's all of my plugs. And if Bobby, let me hear it. What do you got?
That's you.
That's you. No Bobby.
I'm Cosch.
Oh, this guy. Yeah. I got really nothing. Just if you haven't listened to the podcast, listen to the podcast. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher. Look for the Hazmat Guys. And actually what we do is we take these shows and we make them into a podcast, which is an audio only. And we also publish these on YouTube, and you'll find them under the Hazmat Guys, which is, I think actually it's THMG Nation Gmail's channel. So if you find it, subscribe to it and check these things out. That's it.
I would definitely like to plug
Mike. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I would definitely like to plug one thing on the Hazmat Guys. A third. Man, he's crushing. Man, you're lucky.
All right, now I'm jealous.
All right. Yeah, you're jealous. At least you can have some. So we are trying to, you mentioned before that we're trying to build a community, and one of the things that we're starting to get going on the Hazmat Guys is a forums page. So we invite everybody to come and sign up for the forums pages. We are hoping to have people from various walks of life, various types of response and industry to represent themselves on the forum. So it should be a great place to go to share and swap information.
Nice.
And the Cosch.
We're going to do another week, and then after that, I think that'll be 2 weeks from now. We'll all be at FDIC, right?
Yep.
2 weeks? 2 weeks from now. So if you're in the area, look us up. We're going to be, like Phil mentioned, we're going to try to do a live broadcast, I think, on Wednesday, Wednesday evening someplace, location to be determined. You can hit me up at hcmtlt@gmail or on Twitter, Hazmat Nation or HazSim. Be safe.
Good stuff. Awesome. Should we clap? How'd I do?
No.
Probably not so good.